Got a great number of registrants for our event today. And even if there are people who are unable to make it, even though they registered, we will be sharing the contact information between everybody who opted in for that option. So we can all follow up with folks who are unable to make it as long as they did that. Great. And Monica, the chair of the Chinese Chamber, will continue to let people in out of the waiting room once we get started here in just a minute. All right. Great. Well, it's 3:02, so let's get started, and people can keep coming in as they log on. So welcome to Tips and Resources for Exporters. This is a collaborative effort of a number of organizations in Ohio. And you can see I'm with the Greater Columbus Chinese Chamber of Commerce. And first of all, I'd like to invite Alex Coles from the Small Business Administration to say a couple words.
All right, thanks a lot, Pat. Good afternoon, everybody. Thanks for coming to the webinar today. There's going to be some great information on exporting. I know all the speakers really well, and they'll provide some great information. So my name is Alex Coles. I'm the district's International Trade Officer for the Small Business Administration. So I help people who are interested in exporting tap into the resources that are available to them. So you'll see a lot of those resources today, and I really do appreciate the Columbus Chinese Chamber partnering with us on this event today. So I'm just going to keep it short and sweet, Pat, and I'll just leave it at that.
Great, thanks, Alex. I'm going to keep it short and sweet too. The Greater Columbus Chinese Chamber of Commerce is a platform on which organizations that are doing business in or with the Chinese-speaking world can share experiences and resources. So you can check us out at columbuschinischamber.org. So let's jump right into this. And if you're not speaking, I just ask everybody to stay muted whenever you're not speaking, whether you're a speaker or not a speaker. First up, we have Darren Srebnick of the U.S. Department of Commerce. He's the director of the Columbus office of the U.S. Commercial Service, the export promotion arm of the U.S. Department of Commerce. He has 18 years of international trade experience, including 5 years of work experience in Japan and the UAE. Darren has worked in the automotive and construction industries as an international trade compliance manager and licensed customs broker. So let's get his slide up just a moment.
So for those who suffered through 50-page PowerPoints the last couple of days, you're in luck. I only have one slide. All set, Pat?
Yep.
Okay, great. So as Pat mentioned, I'm the director for the U.S. Commercial Service, U.S. Department of Commerce office here in Columbus. Simply put, the U.S. Commercial Service is the export promotion arm of the U.S. government. Our mission is to help U.S. companies sell their products or services overseas. So just from an organizational standpoint, we have about 300 trade specialists like me spread throughout the United States, as well as 1,200 specialists stationed at our embassies overseas. So how do we help companies enter new markets? So let's start with export counseling. You may be selling in the U.S. with a direct-to-consumer business model, and you're looking to sell outside the United States and don't know what the most effective market entry strategy could be. We could advise you to work with an agent, distributor, or even consider the possibility of licensing your product. In addition, there are a host of documents, as you can imagine, attached to each export transaction. We can help you determine which documents are required, guide you in completing this documentation, and help identifying import regulations that you must comply with to sell into the market. And then second, focused on market intelligence. Your company may be selling to various end sectors. We can help you determine the best end sectors to sell to in a foreign market by utilizing internal market research databases and also our boots on the ground in the foreign market. And then, in addition, in terms of the market intelligence, you probably receive inquiries from overseas and looking to understand who this particular individual company is. Our overseas posts can do background checks on those potential partners. And then business matchmaking, which is kind of our core service. We can help you find pre-screened potential partners, whether that's an agent, distributor, or end buyer. We will work with you to develop a profile for your company, determine your ideal partner in the target market, and then work in conjunction with our overseas post to find a potential partner. Our agency is also engaged in trade shows. So for instance, if you're exhibiting in Germany, our commercial service staff in Germany may attend the show, provide additional market intelligence, and sometimes even introduce you to potential buyers at the show. So last but not least is commercial diplomacy, and this is where we have, quite frankly, a competitive advantage, the fact that being the U.S. government. Import duty rates in foreign markets can be cost prohibitive, but just as challenging as overseas standards. So we can assist in two different ways: help U.S. companies identify or understand the requirements to be compliant with overseas standards, as well as work with the Foreign Standards Agency if requirements are overly burdensome and are in violation of bilateral or multilateral treaties. We also work with your company to pursue foreign international government contracts, overseas tenders, when competing against foreign firms by marshaling U.S. government resources and authority to level the playing field. So while we're a government agency, we're very much aligned with the private sector. We are evaluated by our stakeholders, including Congress, on our abilities to facilitate international sales. And just as an example, that in fiscal year 2020, we facilitated over 80 billion with a B in exports from the United States. So I am at 2 minutes, 10 seconds, 20 seconds. I think you're on mute, Pat.
Yep. Always has to happen once. All right. Thanks, Darren.
Appreciate
Excellent.
it.
Super. So next up, we have Roberta Winch, and I'm going to share the first part of her PowerPoint before I introduce her. Just a moment.
Are you going to bring that up, Pat?
I have it.
Okay, great.
It's coming right up. Great. All right. All right. Our next guest is Roberta Winch of the Ohio SBDC. Roberta Winch is a do you pronounce it NASBITE? N-A-S-B-I-T-E?
Yes.
Certified global business professional with over 15 years of experience in international business. Her private sector experience includes international luxury and aspirational fashion industry experience, where her business travels took her throughout Asia and Central and South America. She has worked and resided in New York, San Francisco, California, Tokyo, Japan, and Brussels, Belgium. Her current role as Director of the Export Assistance Network at the Ohio SBDC, hosted at Columbus State Community College, has allowed her to assist a variety of industries with a diverse range of exporting initiatives. She is a co-instructor of the Ohio Export Internship Program Classroom at Ohio State University's Fisher College of Business. And Roberta holds a BA in International Studies from American University in Washington, D.C., and an MBA from the University of Pittsburgh. Roberta?
Yes, thank you. Well, you heard my colleague Darren speak to all of the federal resources available for exporters, and I represent the state of Ohio resources. If you want to go to the next slide, Pat. I represent the export services that are managed under the Department of Development, the Ohio Department of Development. I am the export director in the Columbus region, but I have colleagues who are positioned around the state that do the same for their regions in Ohio. And what you see here are the four service offerings that we have. Of course, the Export Assistance Network that represents our counseling, our advising to companies, small and medium-sized businesses here in Ohio. And then we have three other programs, the international market support. We have access to, I think, over 125 countries now around the world. These are available to our taxpayers, businesses. We can provide in-market, on-the-ground assistance. We do a lot of work with companies and helping them to identify distributors or partnerships. Sometimes we do very high-level research, and sometimes we do very in-depth research, and it can include identifying potential customers as well. I'm going to leave the internship for last, but we have the International Marketing Access Grant for Exporters. It is a federal program, sharing state funding as well, but we are able to support our companies with internationally focused market activities. And there are monies available for those companies who complete an application with very specific activities, and then they are reimbursed up to 50%. This year it's a spend of up to $20,000 per company on those approved and eligible activities, meaning that they could do those activities and get $10,000 back. This is again to promote our companies in exploring international activities. And lastly, if we can go to the last slide, is the Ohio Export Internship Program. I saved this for last because we are actually, as of yesterday, was our final day to officially accept applications. This is from across Ohio, from companies who might be interested in hosting an intern for this summer. We, as was mentioned, I'm involved in the OSU Ohio Export Internship Program class. We have 4 of these classes taking place in the spring semester at different universities here. And we have other universities who are participating in this classroom. This has been in existence since 2012. And we are training these students in exporting, and then they are matched at a state level to company applicants. It's been an extremely successful program. Students are paid $17 an hour over the summer, and they get reimbursed, the companies get reimbursed 50% of those wages. So it's an excellent program to consider. I did get permission that if we have anybody on today who has an interest in this, to please reach out to me in the next day or so and for consideration. So with that, thank you.
Great, thank you very much, Roberta. The internship program, I've heard many great things about it year after year. So if there's anybody on here who can take on an intern, highly recommended by many successful participants, both on the company side and the intern side. Excellent. Next up, we have Ed Scheck. And Ed, while you go ahead and share your screen, I will introduce you.
Sounds good.
Thank you. Ed joined the Office of International Trade team in October 2021. Prior to joining the Small Business Administration, he had a 25+ year career in international banking and financing. Starting out in private banking, Ed then joined a bank in Connecticut and was part of the Latin America team offering Ex-Im Bank's foreign buyer product. Then Ed joined PNC in Pittsburgh, where he again was part of the trade finance group offering Ex-Im's foreign buyer program. During his tenure at PNC, he traveled extensively throughout Latin America. Ed worked with foreign buyers in segments such as heavy equipment, medical equipment, and U.S. franchises, among others. Huntington Bank was his next stop. At Huntington, in addition to Ex-Im's foreign buyer program, Ed helped develop a Mexico platform that comprised of Ex-Im, Mexican financial entities, and the Ex-Im Bank of Mexico, known as Bancomext. As SBA's export finance manager based in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, he is responsible for promoting the programs in Pennsylvania, Delaware, and Southern Ohio. Ed is fluent in Portuguese and proficient in Spanish. All right, Ed, thank you very much.
I try. Can you guys see the, can you see the slides?
Yes.
Perfect, perfect. Good, good. Good afternoon, everyone. Again, like Pat said, my name is Ed Scheck. I am based here in Pittsburgh, and I work at the SBA Office of International Trade. This Office of International Trade, the mission of the office is to advance and support small business and international trade development. Very important to have that mission. And I'm known as an export finance manager, and there are about 21 of us across the U.S. And my focus, as Pat was mentioning, is to promote the SBA export programs. And the way we do this is by reaching out to small businesses like yourselves and banks and lenders, because tying what Darren said and tying what Roberta said, I'm the money guy. I've got the cash, or at least I help get the cash. So why is this important? What I'm saying right here, You see here how 95% of consumers live outside the United States. Very important. And why not try to get a piece of the pie there? And then what I think is really really neat statistic here is that 98% of exporters are small businesses, up to 500 employees. So that's that is like our mission. This is what we target. This is what we're in business for. We want to get these small exporters really to develop their exports because of a 95% consumers outside. So to take a next step is we all know that a company and a bank, they all want to get paid. The company wants to export and make sure they get paid. The bank wants to lend and make sure they get paid by the company. So it's an interesting interesting cycle, and we come in as so to say a risk mitigation type platform here, because we want to make sure that the process of export, the cycle of the export takes a good is successful. So, and how do we do that? Well, before I say it, this is a slide that I like to put up, so the exporter or the U.S. company can see what levels of risk you're willing to take. Now, of course, cash in advance is the lowest risk for the exporter, but then the foreign buyer is not going to want to pay you before you ship unless you have an excellent relationship with your foreign buyer. And of course, you don't want to ship before you get paid unless you have a good relationship, of course, with the exporter. So we try to stick in the middle here in the moderate range. So we really have to, that's one of the purposes for these government-backed programs. So how do we do? I'm sorry. Okay. So how do we do this? How do we accomplish our mission to help small business? Well, on the SBA side, we have these three programs: the Export Working Capital Program, the Export Express Program, and the International Trade Loan. These are the three programs that we promote to both the U.S. companies and to the banks. Now, before we get into a little bit of an overview of each of these programs, I want to give us sort of like a little scenario of what's out there for us. What do we look at? So, or who do we speak with in terms of the U.S. company? So, of course, we speak to exporters. Now, exporters, they can be in business already for years. Maybe 20–30% of their revenues is exporting. So we come in and let's say, for instance, they want to increase their production. They're producing 10,000 widgets a day. Now they want to do 20,000 widgets a day, and they need financing for that. Bingo, we help. They want to expand into, they sell to the European markets. Now they want to go to the Latin American markets. Bingo, we have some, we work with our partners in the state and at commercial service, say, okay, how can we identify those clients for you that will result in more production, in more sales? So that's one group that we work with. And then we work with an indirect exporter. What's an indirect exporter? You're a manufacturer and you supply Boeing. I mean, Boeing is an exporter. So you're doing your product, you're sending it to Boeing, and then Boeing, incorporates it into their aircraft, and they ship that aircraft, let's say, to Brazil. So there you're an indirect exporter. So that's important also that these programs fit the mold. And it's important because you're indirect, and maybe eventually you want to become a direct. So here's the programs that we can also provide you. And then the third scenario, which I like, is because it's one of those, you're a company and you hear from all of us, we bombard you with information saying, export is a great thing, and it is. And you're saying, wow, I really like to export. I got a nice little product, but I just don't know how to do it. Hey, you've got all the resources right here on this webinar that you can go to figure out how to do it. You can do your business plan with the SBDC, with Roberta. You can go to Darren to find markets. And then you come to me, the money guy, and we try to we always all work together. But the potential that you have, especially in today's world, where you could be at a trade show, It could be a trade show in Chicago, in Atlanta. You could be a trade show in Germany or in Mexico. And all of a sudden you get, a hit on your website, or you get a call from somebody you met and said, I want to buy your product. Can you ship it, to Switzerland? And you're like, oh, okay. I don't know. How do we do it? And that's where the resource partners and ourselves, this is where we come in, come to play. So how do we accomplish these objectives? Let's look at these programs. I'm not going to get into too much detail for these programs. I just want to give you a little taste of what they are, and then we can take it from there. Offline, you can contact us, and we can talk about it. So the export working capital line, as you can see, the loan amount is $5 million. The guarantee portion is basically when we talk to the lender. This should be an incentive for the lender that, when they see a 90% guarantee, that's very good. So the working capital program is really what allows exporters to purchase the goods and services, bottom line. It's the same thing. You get an order for a company for a sale that you're going to make to California. So you get an order to make a product that you're going to ship to Mexico. The concept is the same, the structure is the same. And quite frankly, with the partners that are on this webinar and others, you can do it. You can really do it. And it's not as hard as you would think of, sending something to Mexico versus sending something to California. So what does the working capital finance? Finances the materials, the labor, inventory. So you really, the big difference is it has an international component to it. And what's important is for the lender, for the bank, for your banker, is going to give them a little bit of a guarantee that, okay, you have a sale to Mexico, okay, if we can get a government wrap with this, we can extend the credit facility to you. So that's one thing, and this working capital program, it can support a single purchase order. It can support multiple orders. So it's really, it's flexible in that sense. So that's just quick. Then another program we have is our Export Express program. And with the Export Express program, it's up to $500,000. Remember, the working capital was $5 million. This is $500,000. Again, for a lender, it's a good guarantee. For a company like yourself, let's say, for instance, you have only $100,000 purchase order or order. Let's do it this way. It's as the word says, even though it's the SBA, it's express. It can be done, it can be done quickly, and it's a good program. It does the things what the working capital does. Again, I think it's important for you to see here in the slide, indirect exports eligible. That's a really neat way to start understanding how to export. It's you have that have that opportunity to work with let's say a company in New York that's exporting. You talk about it and you start getting the taste of doing the export. So again, the Export Express can also be a term loan. You have to buy something, or if you want to issue a standby letter of credit. Standby, of course, is sort of like a performance bond, and it's that thing where the foreign buyer is saying, okay, you want me to pay you, but how do I know you're going to perform? So this is something that's very important when it comes for lending and for transacting when you're on the international stage. Then the third product, which I enjoy quite a bit, which I think is an excellent program, is our international trade loan, which is basically a term loan that, the maximum loan is $5 million. Again, for a lender, a 90% guarantee is pretty nice, especially when you can sell this loan on the secondary market. You can make a nice penny on it. And what the idea of the ITL is, or international trade loan, is for you to expand your export operations, improve competitiveness. That's important. Improve competitiveness. I'll get back to it in a second. One of the things that this does is, let's say, for instance, your sales are reduced, reducing or decreasing, and it's because of foreign imports. Hey, I need to buy a piece of equipment because my margin on the old equipment is 5%. If I buy a new one, it's going to be 30%. Bingo. that is that qualifies for this type of loan, and that's where your competitiveness comes in. Another thing is, let's say, for instance, you manufacture a product, and your neighbor manufactures another product, and you think, hey, I can probably, if I bring these two products together, I can I can increase my export production. So here's a business acquisition. You want to buy their company, bingo, we can this ITL can help you support that acquisition. So as you can see, I went, and then, oh, here goes. And then another thing, like Roberta said, was this in Ohio, the image program. Excellent. It's a great program to go, to really go out there, fix your website. Maybe you want to put a Spanish or a Portuguese link to your website. You want to do anything to do with international. There's the money available to do it. So, I know I went a little bit quickly through it because there's a lot of detail. I mean, this is the SBA, lots of details. I didn't want to get too much into details, but one of the things that take away from this webinar is have a discussion. Have a discussion with who with Darren, with Roberta, myself, your banker, your employee. Just anyway, have a discussion about it. Start talking about it. And use us as a resource. Don't hesitate. There's no stupid question, so to speak. Just do it. And you're going to be rewarded, as you can see from the from my initial slide. 98% people are small exports, and 95% of consumers live outside the United States. So with that, I'll stop sharing my screen.
Thank you very much, Ed. And while Chelsie sets up her screen sharing, Ed, can you tell us where Southern Ohio, the boundary between Southern and Northern Ohio in terms of your responsibility is?
Right. So a line from Columbus to Cincinnati is my region. And my colleague, who everybody knows in Ohio, Pat Hayes, and another colleague of mine in Detroit takes care of, I guess, that part, Cleveland and Toledo and that part.
Okay, great. Thank you very much.
You're welcome.
All right, looks like Chelsea's all set. So our next speaker is Chelsie Karling of BriskHeat. Chelsie is Director of Global Distribution and Sales for BriskHeat Corporation. She has been with BriskHeat for 7 years and has 5 years experience in distribution and sales. BriskHeat is a manufacturer of flexible surface heat and other temperature control solutions headquartered in Columbus, Ohio, with a secondary manufacturing facility in Vietnam. BriskHeat goes to market globally through direct sales, e-commerce, and distribution partnerships. Chelsie began her career at BriskHeat in the marketing department, primarily maintaining product content on their printed catalog and digital platforms. This experience allowed her to integrate deeply into the product specifications and variety of solutions they offer, as well as understand their global presence and market. This has proved very helpful in her role in overseeing global distribution, sales, and growth. Chelsie, it's all yours.
All right, thank you, Pat. As Pat mentioned, my name is Chelsie, and I'm going to go over 4 slides today in choosing and managing international distributors. 3 of the 4 slides will focus primarily on choosing and onboarding those distributors, as that is where 75% of the time is spent trying to vet out and figure out who and where we should work with as far as a manufacturer selling our product in a global market. So with that being said, I'll go ahead and get going. So the first slide here, we'll be going over identifying your target territory and the market potential within that territory. The first thing that we always do when we're looking at expanding into a new country or region of a country where we're selling outside of the US is to identify our own weaknesses and where is the weakness in our own sales network. So where are our salespeople located, and where could we provide the best support based on those locations from an international perspective? So BriskHeat has sales offices in China, Germany, Italy, and the US. That makes dealing with the Canadian and Mexico markets very easy from a US standpoint, and then from our Germany and Italy offices, very easy to expand into other European countries as well as other regions throughout China based on those sales presence that we currently have. The second thing that we do is if we don't have an international sales presence is which countries have similar industries where we're already successful. So where are we selling at domestically? Where are our current selling partners thriving? And what other countries have those same types of market and the market share within those countries? And then the third thing is through competitive analysis, determine which competitors sell globally. Who is the primary manufacturer of your type of products within another country? The global sales offices, where are their representatives located, and where are their resellers located? A lot of BriskHeat's competitors list on their website to find a distributor page where you can go and actually see where their sales presence is throughout the world. That makes it pretty easy to say, okay, our competitors seem to be having some success in X country. Maybe that's somewhere we should maybe vet out and see if there's opportunities for us to go in and split that market share. So once we've determined where, we look at the who. So we try to identify and create target lists of who those distributors are, who currently sells in that territory, and how do our competitors go to market in the territory? Are they selling directly? Are they selling through those distributors that you've identified that exist in that territory? Maybe it's online sales. It could be any of those things. And then use your resources. So one of the ways that BriskHeat has been successful in the past year is utilizing the U.S. Department of Commerce and the Ohio Department of Development to help us vet out and look at who are the existing resellers in the target territories. Those are great tools. BriskHeat is also fortunate enough to have our own internal marketing team. Our marketing team is extremely good at utilizing SIC codes to see, okay, our top distributors in the US have these SIC codes. Let's look at the same SIC codes in this country or that country to determine, these could be similar resellers based on the market that they're, or the industry that they're labeling themselves as. And then the third thing is we look at our direct RFQs that we have maybe passed up in the past. So we look at quotes that have come in. Maybe they were in a region or a territory that at that time we weren't able to support. Maybe we had an influx of sales in one territory or country that we were shipping directly to. And for whatever reason, we don't have a sales presence there. That could be a good target territory. And who do those end users buy from if they don't buy directly from us? Is there a distributor they prefer to buy from? Those are three things that are extremely helpful in creating those target lists. So we get our targets and now it's time to vet those targets out. So the BriskHeat vetting process is typically to just initiate preliminary email communication, do introductions, have a phone call, set up virtual meetings, and try to just get a feel for what is that partner or potential partner looking for in a vendor. Who are the other vendors that they carry? What are the primary lines that they have success selling? And perhaps there's a line that you could be an add-on product to. So for BriskHeat, a lot of the times if a potential partner sells a lot of tanks, we manufacture tank heaters. And so if they're already going to their customers selling tanks, okay, do your customers ever need to heat those tanks? If so, it might be a good fit. So once we get the vetting process wrapped up and we determine, yes, this is a partner that we believe would be a good relationship, let's go ahead and move forward with the onboarding process. And the onboarding process, just like onboarding any new employee, the first thing we do is we clearly define the terms and conditions prior to any initial transaction so that both parties know exactly what they're getting into. The terms and condition agreement that we go over with our partners always defines a few key things, which is the partner's discount structure. You do need to take into consideration the type of funds that entity works in. So for BriskHeat, we accept Euro, we accept British pounds, we accept US dollar. If it's a different type of transactional payment, we just need to make sure that everything's in line so that we can do business as seamlessly as possible. The other thing that we do is we make sure both parties are aware of the lines that the partner will carry. Which products do they get that discount for? Are there any stocking requirements? And we want to get that stocking order in so that we can get them their product in a timely manner before they start selling. And then what type of reporting are we going to share back and forth? Those are a few of the things that we make sure are very clear and concise before moving forward with any new partnership. The second portion of new partner onboarding is provide samples, provide marketing collateral. Working internationally, it's always best if you can provide translated material. BriskHeat is fortunate enough to have several different bilingual and trilingual people working under one roof. So we do have a lot of people who can help our marketing department out with that. However, we do have the ability to outsource that as well. So I always encourage people to outsource the translations and get it translated right. And if you can provide that marketing material prior to hosting any type of training in person or virtual training, it's so much easier to get those people up to speed with what is it that you're going to be talking about. And if it's in their language, it just kind of makes everything flow a little bit smoother. And then the last thing is maintain constant communication. Constant communication is key to any relationship. Having open conversations and reassuring the new partners that you're here to help them. No question is a dumb question. Any communication that helps build relationships. I mean, don't just talk to them about the product and things like that. What do they do? What time zone are they in? What time is it where they are? What time is it where you are? Having that understanding just helps, be a person with your partners. Don't just be business to business, build that relationship. And then once your partner's onboarded, you're to the fun stuff, right? You get to help them sell the product, make some money, and everybody gets to be successful. So anytime we bring on a new partner, we go back through our own sales history and our own RFQs and quotes and opportunities that we've had within their territory. And we say, hey, this came to us. We either quoted it and we didn't win it, or maybe we did quote it. Maybe we did get the sale, but they didn't have a person there to help them out. Maybe you should follow up, introduce yourself as the new local representative or local BriskHeat partner. Or if we get an RFQ in, we'll send it directly to them so that the new partner knows this is a two-way street. If we're successful in giving you opportunities that you can close on, and you're successful selling, it's a win-win situation. And everybody wants to be a part of a two-way relationship. The second thing is do some marketing initiatives based on how your partner sells and how their customers like to buy. So with BriskHeat specifically, we sell a large variety of product. And so it can be overwhelming to bring a new seller into the world of selling the BriskHeat product because there are so many products that are available. And so what we'll do is say, you know what, this month, let's focus on selling drum heaters. Do you have any customers who store material in a 55-gallon drum? Go talk to them, tell them you have these heaters that you can sell, and make it very easy for them to get a couple quick success stories. And then lastly, I can't stress enough the open line of communication. The more familiar your partners are with you and your brand, the easier the relationship will be to build upon, and the more success you'll see relatively immediately. And so I hope that this segment and the information presented was useful. And with that, I'm going to pass it right back to Pat.
Thank you very much, Chelsie. That was very informative. Appreciate you sharing BriskHeat's experience.
Yeah,
Excellent.
Absolutely. Let me see if I can stop sharing my screen here. There we go.
Perfect. All right. And Vinita, are you able to share your screen? Wonderful. All right, and then just a quick unmute and we'll be ready to go. All right, so our final speaker, best for last, is Vinita Mehra of Kegler Brown. Vinita serves as leader of Kegler Brown's global business practice and is qualified and licensed to practice law in both Ohio and India. She counsels corporate clients regarding a broad range of complex national and international corporate transactions and intellectual property issues. Vinita represents U.S. companies in international transactions and a wide variety of legal issues, including outsourcing agreements, joint ventures, logistics and distribution restructuring, exporting overseas, tax structuring, mergers and acquisitions, project finance, licensing, intellectual property protection, and management and operational strategies. Vinita counsels non-U.S. companies on the legal and tax issues pertaining to undertaking expanding business operations in the U.S. Vinita also advises companies on federal trade compliance issues such as export control regulations, FCPA, and more. Great. Vinita, please.
Thank you, Patrick. It's not helpful to be the last speaker. No pressure here. But since I have very limited time and I have a lot of content on my PowerPoint, which Patrick will share with you all later on. But in the limited time that I have, I just wanted to share with the audience what are some of the top 10 legal issues that every company should consider at a bare minimum when they're trying to export. The number one, I think Chelsie very nicely summarizes, anytime you decide to look at a new market or start exporting your products or even services, you must have some strategic planning in terms of have good knowledge of the global business, have a better understanding of the market. You want to evaluate your product strategies and related pricing, because the product strategy that you may use in the US may not work in Germany or may not work in China or in India. Each country is very unique in terms of the marketing and sales. And you may also want to be a little bit flexible in terms of your pricing as you expand to a new market. It's also important to analyze and identify regions and state within that country, which is most appropriate for your business need. The reason for that is that one size does not fit all. Just the way we see in the US, that each state is so different. Even the language and the food we eat here is so different from state to state. The same philosophy applies when you go overseas. You want to make sure that you're not having a cookie cutter approach for the entire country when that doesn't work. And it's really important to evaluate your entry options. But the key is that you have to have, even before you start exporting, you must have a strategic plan, and due diligence is definitely the key to any successful export before starting any exporting or having partners and so on. The second top issue I would say is finding the right partners and agents. I think you all heard about that in the previous thing, because having the right partner makes or breaks your global business strategy. We tell our clients that they're to consider many entry options, because when we talk about exporting, we only think about agents or distributors or partners, as Chelsie was saying. But there are many entry options. And as a company, you want to see that from a legal perspective, operational perspective, tax perspective, which of this entry option is going to be most profitable or productive for you all to explore. We have clients who do direct sales from the US. We have clients who don't want to sell their products in their country and take the burden on of exporting and importing, but then they get into technology collaboration agreements and trademark license agreement, where they give the local partner the know-how, the technology to manufacture the product and then sell it under our client's name. This is also considered a type of an export, but that's like export of services rather than product. But that's also a very common entry option for getting your products globally. And then obviously the standard agency relationship, distributor and franchisee relationships can also be considered. The third important thing is to have a good understanding of applicable international and import laws. As a company, you must ascertain what import restrictions may be there in the country that you're exporting to, because an import license may be required. Some countries have banned the import of certain products altogether. So really important to identify any import restriction. You also want to find out what are any local product standards. Different countries may have their own standards for particular products, and they may need a product to be certified for the appropriate local requirements. That's also then has to be accompanied by a declaration of a conformity, which then needs to be attested, and you need to get a certification from your consulate here. So it's really important before you start exporting, you have a good understanding of the laws of the foreign market. And also then investigate local laws on marketing and selling. You may not have to comply with local consumer protection laws. That's very important, especially if you're selling directly to the retailer. Are there any price controls on some products? A good example is India and China does have some price controls for certain pieces of product, like, certain telecom products cannot be sold beyond a certain price in those countries. So it's really important to understand, are there any price controls for your particular product? There could be restrictions on advertising or selling to minors. So getting a basic understanding of local laws on marketing and selling will be a very important issue. Similarly, you want to also ascertain if there are any export trade restrictions. So you obviously want to know about the import restrictions of the foreign country, but what are restrictions that are imposed by US in exporting your products? All US exports are actually subject to what we call the US export control regulation. For those who don't know what the export control regulation is basically regulates the release of any critical technology, services or information to foreign nationals within US or outside of the US. For example, equipment, software code, chemical, biological materials, technical data. So you want to make sure that you're in exporting, you are complying with any export control regulations, and you don't need a particular license to export that product. Another rule to consider is what we call the Ofac rules, which is basically the rule says that you're not permitted to sell directly or indirectly to certain person or entities who are on the Office of the Foreign Asset Control sanction list, such as Iran, Syria, Cuba. You want to make sure that you're not selling to those people indirectly too. We have seen instances where a purchase order comes from Dubai, but the end customer may be in Iran for that product. But you still have to do your due diligence and not sell it to, the agent or distributor who asked for it, maybe from Dubai. The other, you want to be export. It's not an export trade restriction, but a key regulation to consider in exporting is to be aware of the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act. Paying bribes is illegal in most countries. I say most countries because in some countries it's the way of doing business. But however, paying or failing to prevent payment of bribes overseas is also illegal. So for example, you might face legal action if you allowed or encourage your agent or your distributor acting on your behalf to pay bribes, or if you fail to prevent them from doing so. So it's really important to put in place procedures, best practices for your agents and distributors to prevent any anti-compliance of the Foreign Corrupt Practice Act. The other issue is important is the labeling and the marketing requirement. Labeling is an important element for all products that are being exported. Especially when you have products, you have to put certain declarations which may be required of that country. Some countries require that the product has to be labeled in local language, especially if it is in direct sale for retail. We have seen in recent times, China being a good example, and India, and we also have seen in some other Asian countries like Vietnam and Indonesia, that the custom authorities do pay attention to when they ensure that if all pre-packaged commodities, we have a lot of clients who are in the hospitality business who are selling coffee and other products globally, any of those pre-packaged commodities, especially intended for retail sale, must have the required information as required by their country and also in their language before they're sold in the retail market for consumption. And sometimes that adds on to the cost of your product in exporting. So very important to keep that in mind. The sixth issue is import tariffs. You got to pay the government on both sides of the border. Nobody lets you sell anything in free here. So you want to make sure that you understand the local import taxes. All goods are exported generally subject to an import tariff. Import taxes can be obviously custom duty, excise duty, and then some type of an additional charge. Import tariffs can be anywhere between 0% to 150%. Yes, we've seen tariffs of 150%. We mostly see that in alcohol and tobacco products in exports. Depending upon what the harmonization code is used for classification of the goods, the tariffs rates are based upon that, and every country has their own import tariffs. And it's going to be really important to accurately classify your products. And sometimes in your contract, you could consider to shift the burden of the tariffs to the end customer. So your contract should specify who's responsible for handling custom clearance and who's responsible for import taxation. You also want to make sure that you understand the taxation of that country. Likely there would be some form of income tax if you are generating profits or the activities that you're undertaking in that country is considered taxable activity. A lot of time people don't see the distinction between income tax and what we call indirect taxes. So income tax is one piece of tax, but in some countries you may also be responsible for what we call sales or value added taxes, which is actually in addition to the import duty and is in addition to the income tax. So there are different layers of taxes you want to pay attention to. Obviously, at a minimum, you would pay attention to the import duties and then the value-added taxes and sales tax, and then determine will you also get taxed based on income tax in that case. I think Chelsie made a very good point on contracts and enforcement. I hear a lot from clients, especially the ones who are doing work in China and some other countries, that do we really need to have a contract? Can we even enforce it? Why should I pay a lawyer like you to draft up a contract for me? You know, I always say that having a written contract is better than not having one. Now, if we are not able to enforce it, that's a different story. But if you don't have a contract, we don't even have an enforcement mechanism. So at least start off with having a contract, and then we'll try to see how much of that we can enforce in it. In the contract, it's really important to consider the drafting, the choice of law you want. The forum provision is very crucial. You need to remember that certain issues may be subject to a law which is different from what the parties have agreed to. So even if your agreement says it's governed by US law, but you know, issues pertaining to intellectual property, if there are any labor law issues, if there are any agency issues, will most likely will still be governed by the laws of that country where the activity is being undertaken. We also tell clients to think through what type of dispute resolution clause you would want in a contract, litigation versus arbitration. If parties really want to quickly end dispute arising from the contract, obviously depending upon the jurisdiction, an arbitration clause is necessary to avoid the lengthy civil procedure. And the reason I say that is I've seen enough agreements which say the governing law is laws of Ohio, dispute resolution is the courts of Ohio, but the party against whom you have a claim is not even living in Ohio, let alone living in the US. So even if you do get a judgment from a court here in the US from Ohio, you would have to take that judgment in the foreign country where the party is to enforce that judgment to recover anything out of your claim. So we tell our parties to think through what are some of the issues that could arise leading to a dispute, and then think about what would be the most appropriate governing law and dispute resolution clause. Sometimes people just get very worried having foreign law being the governing law. And in some cases, it's actually to your benefit to not have US law, but have the foreign law governing your contract. The ninth thing is, which is really important, is protecting your intellectual property. Your IP is what I call is your crown jewels. So you want to make sure that that you are trying to find that what intellectual property protection you can have in that jurisdiction. Most countries are first to file. So before you file your trademark, your copyright, your patents, if somebody else has gone ahead and filed the trademark similar to your name, they get the first right. So it's really important to, even if you have substantial sales happening in a particular jurisdiction under your brand, you want to protect your brand in that country because most of these countries are first to file jurisdiction. Some countries don't even have statutory protection of trade secrets. Like we see here in the US, we have trade secret laws in the state. So you want to make sure you're protecting your trade secrets or confidential information through confidential agreements. And you want to make sure there are proper assignment clause in those contracts. And then lastly, but not the least, have patience and commitment. Because global business takes time, effort, and it's not something that you can establish overnight. It's really important that you identify the obstacles. What are the barriers that would come into place in doing business globally? And it's very important to be aware of them and then be well prepared for them, because that will make it less frustrating to do business globally. have different approach to communication. Just the way you communicate with your colleagues here may not work the way you communicate with people in China or India or others. So sometimes you need to take a step back and agree to disagree to come to some level playing field for communication. Important to have flexibility into their approach so that prices and other contract conditions can be adjusted. You have to see that there are cultural nuances that go into negotiations of transactions in dealing with people from other countries. And then lastly, which is my favorite, believe in the 2R, which is respect and relationship. The analogy I give is that in the US, we like to do the deal first and then the handshake. But in most of the countries, especially in the Asian countries, they like to do the handshake first and then the deal. Therefore, building a lasting and a trusting relationship is really important for any successful global business venture. But that's it, and I think we'll take questions later on. Thanks, Pat.
Great, thank you very much, Vinita. So actually, we're going to combine the Q&A period with our breakout networking time. And the way we do our networking is we use the Zoom breakout rooms, and it will automatically assign people to rooms. So if you're not assigned to a room in which the person you were going to ask your question of is also located, all of the speakers today can be reached through LinkedIn, and many of the speakers, their emails are actually public domain because they work for the government. So if you're not in the Zoom room with the person you want to ask a question of, you can reach out through LinkedIn or by email. So we're going to have Zoom rooms with 4 people each, 6 minutes in length. After the first one is over, if you have time to do another one, anyone who's still remaining at that point, I will open new Zoom rooms. And if anyone has to go right now in order to make it to a 4 o'clock commitment, please go ahead and feel free to take off for that. But thanks again to all our speakers today. And thanks also to Alex Coles for getting the ball rolling and bringing everybody together. So thank you very much. And I'm going to build the Zoom rooms.